All Day Project, Card, JAESSBEE. These groups have something in common. They not only have released new songs or debuted this summer season, but all of them are mixed gender groups, which is not something we see often in the K-pop world, as in the past decade or so, it's been deemed difficult to succeed in this format. Nevertheless, entertainment companies and producers have not given up, and there might be a possibility that co-ed groups could become a trend again. For more on this, we connect to our K-pop expert, Jeff Benjamin. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining us today. Now, Jeff, let's start with the rookie K-pop group that sings
We ain't even famous,
but have become famous in the blink of an eye. It's ALLDAY PROJECT, made up of 3 female members and 2 male members. Now, the group debuted less than 3 weeks ago and have been sweeping the charts. So how have they been doing? What's behind their successful debut?
Okay, first of all, did you guys practice that beforehand?
A little bit.
a little bit.
Okay. That was good. That was good.
Thank you.
Yeah, like you said, All Day Project, they've already have this great catchphrase, right? And they've been able to do that, I think, through a couple factors here. One, we can't ignore that the fact that they come from the Black label, which is, of course, the somewhat newly created label by Teddy, the main producer for iconic groups like 21 and Blackpink. And he's just such a reliable hit maker, right? He knows how to make sounds that kind of have these universal appeals. I think everyone's always craving something new from Teddy. He always knows how to make a hit. So they had a really great backing from the beginning. But also, I think the combination of people here is something really remarkable. There's 5 members, right? And if we quickly look through them, there is Annie, who is the granddaughter of the chairwoman of Shin Se-gae Samsung Group. She was rumored to be part of Meow, but she's actually part of this group. There's Tarzan. He was known as a model and rapper. He was in music videos for New Jeans and Idol. Bailey Sok is a choreographer, famous dancer. She was on TV shows like America's Got Talent, World of Dance. We also got Woo Chan, the other man. He was on a popular TV competition, Show Me the Money. He was rumored to be part of Big Hit Entertainment's new boy band. And Youngseo was actually the most unexpected addition. She was a member of Islet, actually, and competed on the show that created them, but she left before their debut and nobody knew why. But kind of most importantly, it was always about the fact that these are 5 people that everyone kind of knew about in general and knew something about them, so they're not completely fresh faces.
I can definitely see that each members are very experienced. Now, before All Day Project, Card were the representative mixed gender group in the K-pop scene, and just a week ago they actually released their 8th mini album, and also JAESSBEE, a mixed gender music group created through the entertainment content on YouTube, also dropped a digital single late last month. So now, are mixed gender groups kind of back in fashion? And if yes, why do you think so?
I think now is the time to see. I guess it's tough to say if, there's 2 new groups in JAESSBEE and All Day Project, if that's a trend. But I'd say it's a really big win for co-ed groups right now, especially with All Day Projects, because it's been difficult in general for them to work, not even just in Korea, but around the world. But, again, if you look at JAESSBEE, I think they came together, right, by making content on YouTube together. They kind of have this established fan base and interest with them. They have some famous names behind them. And it's kind of, even you go back to Card too, many of the members had a lot of experience in the industry too. Somin was a member of girl groups like April and Purity. She was almost a new member of Kara, BM, and JSF. They were in music videos for their label mates like Kara and Rainbow, Guhara. They were kind of like, once again, these faces that we were kind of seeing and knowing, and they were able to come together in this new way. So I'd say right now, it's kind of like, this is the big test, right? And I think, based on Card, based on JAESSBEE, based on All Day Project, it's kind of all hitting a really good point right now.
So it might also be just a little coincidence that they all are releasing their songs at this season, or it might not be a coincidence. Maybe they think really this is the timing. Maybe it might be a strategy. But what we can say is that, Jeff, in the 1990s, we had much more of these co-ed groups. I can name a few on the top of my head. We have Uptown, Cool, Coyote, Rula, Shop. So it was much more common. So why did this trend kind of vanish in the past years?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's not even limited once again to Korea or K-pop. I think it's just always been a bit more difficult to appeal a mixed gendered group in general. More or less girl groups and boy groups, they appeal to boys and girls in different ways, right? With girl groups tend to be, models, role models to women, or, appealing to the male gaze, whatever it might be. But then boy groups are also marketed as sort of, objects of affection or being very cool. And ultimately those commercial interests really kind of won in the end, is that, it was commercially made more sense to actually go with the single gender groups. But I think on top of that, the attempts that did come from these co-ed groups, maybe not so much in the 90s, but definitely, at least when I saw K-pop taking off in a more international way, the groups were just kind of subjected to a lot of scandals, a lot of rumors, especially as the internet blew up, lots more people talking about them. Photos, way more photos being taken, people wondering if the members are dating. You even go back to groups like Troublemaker and Triple H, which Hana from Cube Entertainment was part of. They had a lot of people talking about them, which is good in one sense, but also, caused a lot of kind of difficulties with the groups. So, on one hand, it's great to look back on these groups and kind of see, it's almost nostalgic in that way, but, ultimately kind of the sad, boring answer is that commercial interests ultimately won out.
Right, so we did see a decrease in these co-ed groups in Korea, but what about in other countries? In Korea we see this less or fewer of mixed gender groups, but how is other countries doing in regards to this?
Yeah, it's kind of similar, and you can even look at it a bit like region by region. Where I am in the US, I don't even really remember many like mixed pop groups in that way. I remember there was one TV show that made a mixed group, and I think they put out an album and disbanded. But, if you look at Europe, they've had some success with mixed gender groups. There's been some famous names like S Club 7, Ace of Base, A-Teens, but it hasn't really continued on much past then. Once again, that was sort of the 90s, 2000s groups that really were able to break out. Latin America actually has a really interesting kind of take on the sort of mixed gendered groups, is that many times actors or entertainers from, established TV shows or soap operas will actually come together in mixed groups. Mexico is actually really big into this. There was this popular group, I remember them, RBD. They had a lot of success from 2004 to 2009. They disbanded, but actually came back not too many, I believe in 2021, had a huge tour. It sold millions. They had over 1 million people attend this tour, made hundreds of millions. It was really kind of remarkable. And I think once again, that's hitting on this trend, right? And this idea that there were some famous faces or ways people knew them other than music. They came together in this co-ed group, and people really seem to accept that and get excited about them.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think actually KARD has been very popular in Latin America. So maybe, right. So maybe that's also a reason why, because we can see more of those co-ed experiences over there. But speaking of KARD, the members of KARD actually have mentioned numerous advantages of having female members and male members, and the biggest one being the variety. Now, they say no matter how you group the members together, you can create a variety of combinations within the group. So, Jeff, what do you think are the factors that make mixed gender groups attractive?
I love that. I think there really is a huge advantage just the way you can create so many varieties. There are songs where, the men can take the lead, the women can take the lead. It can be more balanced. You can share the male perspective, the female perspective, a single perspective, a group perspective. There's so many ways you can play with that. And I think it's almost a bit of a shame that we haven't had so many, different ways to sort of think about our pop music or K-pop music in that way. And musically, you can make so many jumps, right? You can go from, a soft melody, pop melody to rougher raps. And it's just kind of fun to be able to see, just the different ways you can do it. And I think it's very refreshing to see, the group dynamics actually with guys and girls in it. Sometimes, just as a journalist, right, you can kind of see, the way a boy group might operate together, the way a girl group might operate. But I love seeing a group like KARD and how they operate, and just seeing, the big brother mentality you see from JAESSBEE and BM, but then the way that, the younger members are kind of almost like the little sisters. It's very charming and very cute.
Now, Jeff, you earlier did mention a few of what could be disadvantages of mixed gender groups, but let's talk a little bit more about them, because there's probably a reason for why we're not seeing them in the past decade or so.
Yeah, I've actually discussed this with people who have worked with groups like KARD, and I actually think BM himself has spoken about this as, the reason he really got into producing music and the group started making more of their own choreographies is because the industry isn't totally set up to kind of connect with, co-ed productions in that way. Many times, it's considered, oh, this is, a group, this is a song for male singers, or this is a song for female singers. Even just the physicality of it, the groups have different ranges between men and women. So, I know songwriters and producers, they tend to not always have that perspective in mind. And I think it's always very tough to be able to find, a demo or a different kind of song that might work for both men and females. So I think that's why you also ultimately lots of times see, groups, mixed co-ed groups rather, that kind of starts leaning one way or the other. It's very tough to kind of make that balance. So there's been groups like A-Teens, who I mentioned before, where it was mostly the women taking the lead on most of the songs, and the guys were kind of in the background. But I also think that's why KARD has been quite successful and been able to last the way they have, is because they focus a lot on trendy music, and it's not necessarily about, okay, we have to have this identity and we have to always make it sound like this, but rather they can chase trends and they can kind of focus their music in that way, rather than it needing to be like, oh, this is our male sound, this is our female sound. They tend to focus on trends, which can be a disadvantage for a larger musical identity, but it has been working so far for KARD so far.
Jeff, that's a very interesting perspective, because other things seem very trivial listening to your answer, because what I was thinking of, you have to have different changing rooms whenever you tour around, or there could be some issues with living together in the same house, which has been also mentioned though. But again, a very interesting perspective regarding that musical aspect.
Definitely. And before we let you go, Jeff, finally, with ALLDAY Project that we've been talking about today, the newly debuted mixed gender group in Spotlight, do you think this rookie group could kind of spark this co-ed or spark this trend in K-pop industry?
I think it could, and I think a lot of people are going to be watching them very closely. Even the name, right, ALLDAY Project is kind of interesting, right, because lots of times in K-pop, it's a word that, you can be a project group, or you can be like a temporary project. So, maybe the members will end up doing their own things, or doing things in different units or combinations. I think that could be kind of interesting. And also, I think, ALLDAY Project is really, I think, proving that if you have a big name in your company and they don't necessarily fit with a current musical vision, or one boy group or girl group has a concept that they don't really vibe with, it's not like all hope is lost. I think Wuchan was with Big Hit, right? And that's a huge label. And when the band that he was working with didn't end up debuting, he went to the Black label. And I think the Black label has been really smart not to lose him, not to lose someone like Annie, who of course has, so much interest and influence behind her. So I think this could actually be a really positive thing for the industry in general, and definitely in terms of getting more co-ed groups and getting that diversity out there, but also maybe allowing more just different kinds of artists not to lose their chance and have more opportunities in the industry, rather than it feeling like all hope is lost, if you don't make the debut lineup at some point.
Well, let's keep an eye on those mixed gender groups. Jeff, thank you very much for your insights today, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
And thank you, Bella, as always. See you back here tomorrow.
Yes, I'll see you back tomorrow.